Hello and welcome back to the Electronic Intifada's live stream for Thursday, September 25th. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleagues Ali Abunimah, Jon Elmer, Asa Winstanley, and Tamara Nassar. It's day 720 of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Coming up, we'll be joined by writer, poet, journalist, and genocide survivor Ahmed Abu Artema to talk about how and why he left Gaza and what he witnessed. Later on in the program, Jon will bring us the latest resistance news from Gaza, along with a report on the Israeli military's use of unmanned, remotely operated armored vehicles as bombs. But first, let's take a look at the news. Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. Israel has killed at least 357 Palestinians and injured at least 1,500 between September 17th and September 24th, according to official records from the Ministry of Health in Gaza. Most of the attacks are still concentrated in Gaza City, where Israel has been bombing high-rise residential towers, hospitals, refugee camps, and tent shelters for weeks as its ground forces advance. Journalist Abed Dawas took this footage after an airstrike on the Tal al-Hawa neighborhood of Gaza City on September 22nd. Reporter Mohammed Kita recorded this clip of an Israeli tank on a road in Gaza City on Tuesday. After a few moments of filming, the tank's gun rotates toward the reporter.
تتوغل في حي النصر. حركت هذا حركت.
شباب والله بتخبطنا زنانه يا شباب خلص انتوا كاتلونا عمال تغامر يا اخو لا خلص
كما تشاهدون هذا ريبوت ولا دبابة؟
ريبوت هذا
لا دبابة إسرائيلية الآن. هذه دبابة إسرائيلية.
As Jon will report on later, Israel continues to use remote-controlled vehicles to destroy entire residential buildings across the city. Photojournalist Ahmed al-Sawafiri recorded such an attack on September 20th. The UN Human Rights Office says that between September 19th and 20th, there were at least 18 recorded attacks on residential buildings in Gaza City, with dozens killed and more remaining buried under the rubble. One of the deadliest attacks, the Human Rights Office says, was a strike on September 20th on 3 inhabited residential buildings on a single block in the Sabra neighborhood in southern Gaza City. The Israeli attack killed at least 20 members of the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 family, including 12 children, with dozens reported missing under the rubble. This came just a day after another residential building housing other members of the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 family in the same area had been struck, killing 8 family members, including at least 4 girls. Faris Afanna, the director of emergency and medical services in Gaza, told reporter Mohammed Abu Salama that ambulance and rescue crews worked non-stop to recover bodies from under the rubble after the September 20th attacks. Afanna said that emergency workers, quote, continue to provide this service despite the danger. The next day, relatives searched local morgues for the remains of their loved ones, while dozens more remained trapped under the concrete. Journalist Saeed Hezbollah filmed an injured young man breaking down after losing his uncle, his cousins, and all of his relatives in the attack. Sitting on the bed of a truck loaded with bodies of his relatives wrapped in blankets, he says, quote, "Look what they did to us, so that the world will see what they're doing to us. Look, martyrs, martyrs."
عمي ولاد عمي وقلبي
ما تعيط يا بن نحن على حبه ما لقيت طب ايش تعيط؟ لقيت حنكون مكانه
غير كل عيدنا نكون مكانه
عيطي حنكون مكانه ما لقيت حيحملوه مكانه ايش تعيط؟
يا رب نروح
ولا واحد فيهم حماس ولا واحد جاد ولا واحد
الله يسوي فينا عشان يشوف العالم عشان يشوف العالم.
Israel continued to attack the beach refugee camp in western Gaza City this week. Reporter 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿 filmed a distraught father searching for his children buried under the rubble on September 23rd after an airstrike on homes in the camp. He says, quote, "I can't hear you, children," calling over and over again for Salma and Saad. Shouting through tears and pounding on rubble with a hammer, he calls out to Saad, saying, "Didn't I tell you to take care of your sister? Didn't I tell you to take care of your sister, my son?" before collapsing in agony.
بنسمعكم يابا. سمعكم يابا. سلمى 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 يابا. سعيد 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 يابا 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 سعيد سعيد يابا سعيد مش قلت لك دماغك عندك مش قلت لك دماغك على فوقتك مش قلت لك دماغك عندك مش قلت لك دماغك عندك يابا.
On Wednesday, September 24th, Israel bombed a residential building where mutual aid workers with the Samir Project organize food for distribution in northern Gaza. A fire quickly spread inside the building. You can hear children screaming as they're being pulled out by people nearby. Rescue workers say that they searched for people buried in the rubble and retrieved a number of bodies.
هواية ونحن كنا قاعدين بنظبط الطرود. هاي الهواية. تعالوا في ناس تعالوا اشربوا تمام في ضربة بدهم يضربوا العمارة.
The Samir Project stated, quote, "As food packages were being organized for distribution, the occupation bombed a residential building, leveling the area around where our team was working. Nearly 500,000 people remain in the north of Gaza, whether because they refuse to leave their land or because they are unable to find costly transport south. Thousands and thousands of families still need food, still need water, still need our help as they are being bombed without mercy." And on Tuesday, civil defense spokesperson Mahmoud Basal captured this wrenching moment when a small boy carried the body of his 4-year-old cousin, Zain, wrapped in a shroud to a cemetery. Basal says that Zain was killed in an airstrike that claimed the lives of 33 people. The boy, accompanied by his father, kisses the shroud and says, "May God have mercy on you, my beloved Zain. You and I used to play together, my darling Zain. We used to play together every day. Send my greetings to your sister and to your father and siblings."
ولا الشعوب الله يرحمك يا زين يا رب. الله يرحمك بوس عليك الله يرحمك يا زين.
كنا نلعب انا وياك.
حطيت بدون شيء.
يا عمري زين يا عمري.
انت فهم رجع.
يا عمري زين. كنا نلعب انا وياك كل يوم يا عمري.
سلم على كل اختك.
سلم على كل اختك وابوك واخواتك.
The UN Human Rights Office said that these relentless attacks, quote, in addition to the steady advance of the Israeli ground forces toward western Gaza City, demolishing residential buildings under its control on the way, appear to have resulted in renewed waves of mass forced displacement to the south of Gaza, where there is no space, infrastructure, or basic necessities to support the influx of internally displaced persons, and where the Israeli military continues to strike shelters, the UN said. Israel's sharp increase in the number of civilians being slaughtered in Gaza City, the UN Human Rights Office added, seem intended to inflict terror on the Palestinian population of Gaza City, forcing tens of thousands to flee. Between September 17th and September 20th, nearly 82,000 Palestinians were displaced from northern to southern Gaza. Photojournalist Moaz Hosni filmed families crammed onto trucks, as he says, quote, united not by a road or a destination, but by the inability to afford the journey, like a temporary arc of collective survival. On September 20th, our contributor Asim An-Nabih, the spokesperson for the Gaza municipality, wrote on social media that, quote, my mind cannot digest the idea of losing Gaza. My brain is incapable of processing the meaning of such a loss. I can't even understand the word itself. I can't engage with it, and I can't place it within any logical context. I might be able to understand and process the loss of anything else, to frame it in a way that time could help me cope with. But losing Gaza? No way. There's no logic in it. None at all. Israel continues to bomb hospitals and the areas surrounding them. On September 22nd, the Israeli army struck the Palestinian Medical Relief Society's building in Gaza City, sending an enormous plume of smoke into the sky. Hassan al-Mogain captured the bombing on video. Medical Aid for Palestinians, MAP, a British charity that works with the Palestinian Medical Relief Society, stated, quote, on September 22nd, an Israeli military airstrike destroyed Al-Samr Clinic, which had been providing healthcare services since 2006. The clinic has been reduced to rubble and its services shut down. The clinic was a cornerstone of community health and provided vital primary health care, mental health support, cancer care, blood donation, physiotherapy, and women's services, MAP stated. 45 staff members, including cardiologists and nutritionists, have lost their place of work and their patients have been left without care. Staff, quote, were given just 10 minutes to evacuate before the clinic was struck. The attack has left the clinic completely destroyed and unusable, including its laboratories and its assistive devices center. In the past 3 weeks alone, the Medical Relief Society reports that 3 of their clinics across Gaza have been targeted in Israeli military attacks. 2 have been completely destroyed, and 1 clinic has been partially damaged. The Ministry of Health in Gaza reported also on September 22nd that after bombing Al-Rantisi Pediatric Hospital last week, it is now completely out of service due to the Israeli army continuing to target the hospital's surroundings. Along with the only children's hospital, the last remaining clinic providing ophthalmological services in Gaza is also closed, the ministry said, as there are no safe roads to either facilities that will allow patients to reach them. Australian doctor Nada Abu Al-Rub, who is working at various Gaza hospitals, described the state of the accelerating medical catastrophe for patients and doctors, especially as mass casualty events are continuous. She says that in addition to the slaughter by airstrikes and tanks, every few hours children arrive at the hospitals malnourished and suffering from infections, leading to cardiac arrests.
We have Mohammed Hamdan here. We lost his sister yesterday, Farah Hamdan. And since it was day 1 for me, and since arrival, we met a lot of other kids who had the same problem. So they all arrived malnourished. Mohammed is better today. He could at least walk. Yesterday, we were so busy looking after him. There was no time to take pictures and photos and videos in the middle of disaster. His legs couldn't hold him because how malnourished he is. قد ايه عمره حمدان محمد؟ 10. He's 10 years old, but he definitely looks younger than 10 years old. His sister was 15. She looked 10 or 7 even. On top of the malnourishment, most of the people here are now intoxicated by the dirty water. So the water here is not good for human use. Even as doctors now, we all have gastritis. And with the poor kids, they can't tolerate as much as we do. On top of their malnutrition, once they have diarrhea, they all run into severe hypokalemia. So we're now watching kids that are having a cardiac arrest. Every few hours, we have a kid with a cardiac arrest. Now,
Dr. Nada Abu al-Rub. And doctors are still being targeted. On September 20th, Israel bombed the home of Dr. Mohammed Abu Salmiya, the director of Al-Shifa Hospital, who was abducted by Israeli forces in November 2023 and detained and tortured for 7 months. He says he left his home in the beach refugee camp to go to work at Al-Shifa, and the bodies of 6 of his relatives arrived while he was on duty. Reporter Nahed Hajjaj filmed Dr. Abu Salmiya mourning over the bodies of his brother, 2 nephews, his nephew's wife, and 2 of their children. Turning quickly to the occupied West Bank, Israeli settlers backed by Israeli soldiers shot and killed 20-year-old Saed Murad Nassan on Tuesday in the village of Al-Mughayr near Ramallah. On Wednesday, Israeli settlers then attacked the funeral of the young man, firing live ammunition at the mourners, Wafa news agency reported. Meanwhile, Israel closed the Allenby Bridge crossing between the West Bank and Jordan indefinitely, just 3 days after reopening it following a shooting by a Jordanian national that killed 2 Israeli soldiers. The crossing in the Jordan Valley, known as Karama on the Palestinian side, is the only crossing point between Jordan and the West Bank. Most of the West Bank's 3.3 million residents depend on the bridge for travel abroad. This week, our contributor Buthaina Hamdan, who is based in Ramallah, wrote in her feature article that as the genocide continues in Gaza, quote, "We are living under a slow genocide in the West Bank, with Israel's annexation of more land, daily killings at the hands of settlers and soldiers, and constant financial strain." We've published many features on the Electronic Intifada in the last week, but we wanted to highlight Brown-Eyed Girl, Men Playing Chess Massacred on My Street by Ahmed Abu Artema, writing from Gaza. Ahmed writes about an initiative for children that he and his family started in 2024, where they used their solar panels to power a screen in the backyard of their house and display cartoons for the displaced neighboring children. Eventually, with some funding, Ahmed says that his family expanded their activities to include psychological support for the children through art and play therapy. One of those children, Ahmed says, was a 5-year-old girl named Siham al-Ashi. Quote, "Soso was the pet name I had given her as she would always run toward me, her arms wide open, ready to fold me into a hug." On November 10th, 2024, at around 1:35 p.m., I stepped outside my home. Children were completely absorbed in their games, and Soso was there, hopping between chalked squares. A few meters away, Abu Hadi, Abu Nahed, and Abu Ahmed huddled around the chessboard. "Come and see how I'm finally going to beat Abu Ahmed," Abu Hadi called me with a voice full of playful confidence. I smiled and was genuinely curious as he had never won a single game before. But something made me hesitate, some kind of a providence. For the first time, I didn't join them and went back inside. I sat down, scrolling through my phone for a few minutes. My curiosity tugged at me more to see if Abu Hadi would really manage to defeat Abu Ahmed. I got up at 1:45 p.m. and opened the front door. I headed toward the garden door to open it and go out to the by street. But I felt as if everything collapsed. An explosion tore through the street and hurled me back. A storm of fragments and dust engulfed me, and my eardrums felt as if they had been perforated by the piercing sound. Chunks of flesh clung to my face and shirt. Blood spattered across our front door. I froze. My arms were trembling, my legs numb. I couldn't move for a moment. The world went silent, except for the ringing in my ears and the heaviness crushing my chest. With faltering steps, I tried to open the garden door, but it didn't budge as it had been twisted and shattered by the blast. I sprinted back inside the house, turned to the door facing the main street, then stepped outside and headed toward the by street where we used to gather every day. The scene was ineffable, horrifying beyond anything words could describe. 4 or 5 bodies lay motionless on the ground right in front of our house. I couldn't move forward, my knees locked, my voice cracked. Oh God, was all I could cry out. Dust was all around. I took a few more steps, and that's when I saw a little girl lying on the ground with part of her brain exposed from her head. She was Soso. I bent down and checked her chest, feeling for her heartbeat with shaky hands. She was still breathing, her pulse faint. Some people screamed around me, "Leave her, cover the body." I couldn't. All I was thinking about was saving Soso. I picked her up in my arms and hurried a few steps toward the main street, desperate to find any transportation to take her to the hospital. Just then, two people with a motorcycle stopped, took Soso, and rushed her to Al-Auda Hospital in Nuseirat. I returned to the site of the incident. The dust had settled, and I saw the full picture of the street. It transformed into something I still cannot name. Beheaded and torn bodies were scattered around. I couldn't recognize a single face, not even one. Then I saw a body wearing a navy blue t-shirt I knew very well. It was mine. Only then did I realize it was my close friend Hisham's body. He had been killed alongside Abu Hadi and Abu Ahmed. Soso went into clinical death and passed away 2 days later on November 12th. The smell of death in Gaza became familiar, almost routine. The street that was once full of life now turned into a ghost street. That airstrike didn't kill me, but it destroyed something inside. It wiped out all the vibes that filled the place. From that moment on, I started avoiding walking through that road, not out of fear, but because I don't want to relive that terrible scene again. It is a mental wound that I will carry for the rest of my life. A few moments separated me from death, but maybe God chose me to live and tell the story of my friends and neighbors. Those are excerpts from Brown-Eyed Girl, Men Playing Chess Massacred on My Street by Ahmed Abu Artema, a journalist and activist in Gaza, on electronicintifada.net. And now, as we always do, we wanted to highlight people expressing joy, determination, and resilience across Gaza and around the world. Today, we'll focus on a general strike by workers and union members across Italy on Monday, who shut down the country to demand an end to Israel's genocide. The Associated Press stated that Italy's grassroots unions, which represent hundreds of thousands of people ranging from school teachers to metal workers, called for a 24-hour general strike in both public and private sectors, including public transportation, trains, schools, and ports. Roads and highways were also shut down. 10,000 people blocked the main highway between Florence and Bologna alone. This was filmed by the Italian Palestinian youth organization Giovani Palestinesi d'Italia. The transit of goods was slowed or partially blocked by workers' sit-ins and rallies in Italy's main ports of Genova and Livorno. More than 20,000 people gathered in front of Rome's central station to protest the genocide. Unions and student organizations denounced, quote, the inertia of the Italian and EU governments, the AP reported. Walter Montagnoli, the national secretary of the CUB union, said at the protest in Milan, quote, if we don't block what Israel is doing, if we don't block trade, the distribution of weapons, and everything else with Israel, we will not ever achieve anything. The Italian news site Genova 24 compiled clips of some of the protests. Students declared, we are all anti-Zionists. and marched in the streets of Genova.
Forte, forte! Siamo tutti antizionisti! Forte! Siamo tutti antizionisti! Ancora, ancora! Siamo
And that's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza. You're watching the Electronic Intifada live stream. I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleague Ali Abunimah. Hi, Ali.
Hi, Nora. Thank you for that. As usual, very difficult for us to get through, very emotional, and particularly so for me personally, but I know that it is for all of us.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're back. I know it's been a really, really hard couple of weeks for you and your family, and people, our listeners and viewers and readers have been sending so many notes of support and love to you and your family, Ali, on the passing of your mother.
Yes, and I think the hardest thing about this for me is I didn't think it was going to be this hard, but I think the hardest thing is this is the first show that she's not watching, and but she's here with us, and she's here with us in spirit. And you know this, Nora, but the plant behind me was one of my mother's plants, and it was the same plant that you had in the background for many, many shows, and she noticed that, and so she called this plant in our house Nora's plant. So I have Nora's plant as named by my mother behind me tonight, and I do want to say thank you for the beautiful tribute that you gave for my mother Samira last week, and to say how grateful I am.
Yeah.
For the love and support from all my colleagues at the Electronic Intifada. You are wonderful people. And on behalf of myself and my family, I also want to say thank you to people in our EI community all over the world who sent their condolences and good wishes. I have read every email. I've tried to read every tweet and every comment on our YouTube channel, and all of your messages truly lifted our spirits. Many of you shared deeply personal stories with me about the passing of your own loved ones, and these words really have been a great comfort. I feel as if you've been hugging me and holding my hand, and I truly wish each and every person who has experienced a heartbreaking loss could feel that. And I just want to reflect, if I may, Nora, that, every society has its own customs and ways of comforting those who've lost loved ones. And in our tradition, of course, it includes a dignified burial and holding aza, a community gathering where people offer condolences and console the family. Friends and family give us care and bring us food. But the most important thing really is just being together at a time of grief and loss. In the 11 days since my mother passed away, I've come to understand even more how important these things are. And I can't help but think of our friends in Gaza who are deprived of these most basic dignities, necessities, and rights, especially a dignified burial according to their religious traditions and customs and beliefs. This by itself is a grave crime on top of so much incomprehensible suffering inflicted by Israel and its accomplices. And so I ask you always to keep them first and foremost in your minds and in your hearts, and to honor my mother and all those who have been lost by continuing to do all we can and doing more and escalating everything we do to speak up for Gaza and demand an end to this genocide. Thank you, everyone. I've felt more love this past week than I have in my life, and it's truly a privilege to be in such a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. I'm so glad that you're able to receive that love, and yeah, and yeah, that's what I've been thinking about so much too. Is, you know, there's that video of that young boy carrying the body of his 4-year-old cousin, and just so much has been ripped from Palestinians in Gaza, and the basic dignities, the dignity of living a full, safe, joyful, love-filled life. And, you know, it's incomprehensible, and it really emphasizes how much we all deserve a life of dignity and a death that is dignified and surrounded by loved ones. And yeah, I mean, I as I told you and your dad the other day, I always wanted to meet your mom in person, and my biggest wish was that she could have returned to Lifta in her lifetime, and that's what we keep fighting for. So thank you, Ali. Thank you. And before we go to our wonderful guest, we wanted to just acknowledge that it was 𝐓𝐡𝐞's birthday on Tuesday. He would have turned 46. And our contributor, Asim Anabi, who is one of his closest friends, took this photo of 𝐓𝐡 a few weeks before the genocide began in October 2023. Asim captioned it, quote, "I took this photo a few weeks before the war, never imagining it would be our last celebration. 𝐓𝐡 savored this piece of cake because it reminded him of a favorite he used to enjoy at Secret Recipe Shop in Malaysia. You are still here, bro. I can feel it. Happy birthday." We miss him. We miss everyone.
And having the time and the space to mourn, it's going to take years to really come to terms with how much we've lost.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, why don't you bring on our friend and our guest, Ahmed.
Thanks, Nora. I'd just like to remind you that you're watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada live stream. I'm Ali Abu Artema, here with my colleague Nora Barrows-Friedman. Ahmed Abu Artema is a Palestinian writer, poet, and journalist, and I'm honored to call him a dear friend. His vision of a nonviolent mass movement in Gaza to challenge Israel's siege and blockade of the territory inspired the 2018 Great March of Return. Israel responded to that joyful, unarmed mobilization of hundreds of thousands of people, young and old, to demand their right of return in the only way it knows how. It deployed military snipers to target civilians, doctors, and journalists, murdering more than 200 people and maiming thousands more. For the past 2 years, Ahmed survived the genocide in Gaza, but lost everything that mattered to him and many loved ones, including his 13-year-old son Abdullah, affectionately called Aboud, who was murdered in an Israeli airstrike on their family home in Rafah in October 2023, just weeks into the genocide. Ahmed's other children were severely injured and evacuated to Egypt with other family members. Ahmed remained in Gaza alone until August 27th of this year. On that day, he was evacuated from Gaza by the Dutch government. About a year and a half into the genocide, one of Ahmed's friends in the Netherlands urged him to apply for a position with the Dutch newspaper De Correspondent. The newspaper accepted and applied for a work permit on his behalf. My Dutch friends and the correspondent made a great effort to help, Ahmed wrote in a deeply moving account of his departure, just published by the correspondent itself. He writes, they contacted the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which then contacted the Israeli and Jordanian authorities to coordinate the departure of 13 people from Gaza to the Netherlands, including me. The coordination took nearly 2 months, a long wait filled with anxiety. Finally, the Dutch embassy contacted me to inform me of the departure day, the meeting place, and the Israeli conditions at the crossing. Ahmed's article is headlined, How I Left Gaza and Came Face to Face with an Israeli Soldier for the First Time. It is in Dutch and not yet published in English, though we hope it will be in English very soon, as well as many other languages. Ahmed left Gaza in a convoy of 3 buses coordinated by several European embassies. In total, 130 Palestinians, including Ahmed, left Gaza on those buses that day through university scholarships, family reunification, and work contracts. Ahmed writes, 130 people will survive the genocide today, but it is a very small number. There are 2 million people who will remain trapped under death. Ahmed Abu Artema joins us now from the Netherlands to talk about his journey and what he experienced and saw in Gaza during this genocide. Alhamdulillah ala salamtak, Ahmed, welcome.
Allah يسلمك dear Ali. Thank you. Thanks for Nora and Tamara and all the colleagues in my family, Electronic Intifada. And first, I'm very sorry about losing your beloved mother. My sincere condolences for you, dear Ali. And your dear mother, your beloved mother, is one of hundreds of thousands of the Palestinians who died without achieving the very simple and very basic human right to return to their homes. This tells us how this world is imbalanced and how the international regime, which allows for Israel to commit all horrible crimes, not starting from October 7th, 2023, but more than 70 decades ago. So we live in a horrible world. I pray for your mother that she is now in a peaceful world, a world without fear, without sorrow, and my condolences for you, dear Ali.
Thank you, Ahmed. And you speak from the experience of deep loss of having lost your beloved son, Abdullah, murdered in this genocide. And he was murdered in what I think, and if you forgive me for saying it, was clearly an attempt by Israel to murder you. And they murdered your son in your place. And the pain you must carry, and I know that you carry, is enormous.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Ahmed, before the genocide, you had traveled outside Gaza, but it was always through Egypt. And in fact, we met when you traveled in 2019 on a speaking tour of the United States, when you came through our friends at the American Friends Service Committee. And it was an extraordinary tour. So you had traveled outside Gaza, but this is the first time you left Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing through Israel. And you write that this was the first time in your adult life that you saw an Israeli soldier face to face. You described that very vividly in your article, but tell us a little bit about that experience now.
Yes, it was very difficult experience and very complicated feelings. You know what the Israeli soldiers means for the humans in general, and for the Gazans and the Palestinians in particular. these soldiers symbolize of murdering, bombarding, killing, blood. And Gaza in particular, from 1994, we haven't seen the Israeli soldiers face to face, but our touch with them was from their warplanes where they bombarded Gaza and yes, beyond the fence and beyond the wall. So and I left Gaza. I traveled, but I wasn't forced to face them. So I felt complicated feeling when I was closing to the crossing Karm Abu Salim, Palestinian name, and the Hebrew name Kerem Shalom. And it's the time to face the Israeli soldier who murdered my son and murdered hundreds of thousands of my people, who destroyed my house, who occupied my land, who expelled me and my grandparents from our land. So I have to face him to see him close up. In the most of the process and the procedures of traveling, we haven't met the Israeli soldiers face to face. The most of the procedures done by cameras or sometimes by Arab workers, non-Jewish or workers in Kerem Abu Shalom. And this is because Israel doesn't look at us as Palestinians as humans. So it treats with us only by cameras or sometimes by non-Jewish workers. We don't deserve from their through their eyes. We don't deserve to treat with us based on our humanity. So this means that they don't look at us as humans. But from my side, this was comfortable because I don't want to see them, to see the soldiers. Finally, in the last part of the procedure, the Israeli soldiers was there to check the names before we go to the bus, to the Dutch bus. So this was the first time I saw the Israeli soldiers in my adult life. I saw them when I was a child, but it was too long time. While I was waiting, the soldiers were moving around and they were talking and they were laughing, sometimes eating. So this triggered the struggle inside me that this soldier who is laughing now, who is eating now, who is talking now with his colleague or maybe with his friends, he is the same killed us in Gaza and bombarded us. So the human being is a strange being. How he can lie, how he can, the human being can deceive even himself or herself. The same person who kills, who commit crimes, he is the same person who is now laughing. And it like masks, the people wear masks so they hide their facts. I felt curious to look at their faces, to trying to solve this question. But in the same time, I was worried that I will not, I don't prefer to normalize psychologically with them if I look to their faces. Finally, they are murderers. They are killing the people. They are committing crimes. So it was only fast glimpses, then I turned away. I was worried even from looking at the faces of the soldiers.
Ahmed, we have a map that shows the evacuation route the buses took from Gaza. It begins in Khan Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip, and continues to Rafah in the far south, and then passes through the Abu Salim or Kerem Shalom checkpoint that you mentioned, which prior to the deliberate starvation campaign was the commercial crossing near the Egyptian border. And from there, it winds through what is now southern Israel, then across the occupied West Bank into Jordan, and finally, you flew to the Netherlands. We're going to ask you about what you saw inside Gaza before you left in a moment, but before we get to that, talk about the experience of seeing historic Palestine beyond Gaza for the first time, and whatever else you want to share about the journey between Gaza and the Netherlands, including how your family outside Gaza reacted when they learned that you were safe.
Yes, yes. The buses moved from Deir al-Balah at 4 a.m. at very early time, but for the people, it's a rare opportunity. They waited it for 2 years, so no one be late. We waited, then the buses moved towards the south. As we moved far south, we saw destruction everywhere, horrible, complete neighborhoods were destroyed, no life, no any sign of life. That places were full of life before this genocide. And it's shocking to see it now for the first time, as arriving there is very dangerous. Arriving there means that you will be shot by the Israeli maybe drones or the Israeli tanks. Destruction everywhere. And then when we move toward Rafah, Rafah is south of Khan Yunis also, all the city is destroyed. Imagine we were speaking about destroying thousands of houses, tens of thousands of houses. But now we are talking about a complete city was wiped out from the map. So when I look at the right, at left, to forward, the destruction everywhere. And through the destruction, the Israeli bulldozers paved ways to facilitate the movement of the military and the tanks. And I wrote commenting on that scene that this is very similar to Israel itself, because Israel itself was built on the rubble of the Palestinian villages. As the Israeli human rights group 𝐓𝐡𝐞 said that many of the parks and Israeli cities were built on the Palestinian destruction. So this is Israel itself. But I was surprised after a while that I started seeing people there. For me, it was very strange. What brought those people to this very dangerous place? Then I started noticing that the numbers of people are increasing, at least thousands. I understood at that time that those people are the aid seekers. They are coming to that dangerous place, trying to get anything of food to return to their children and their families. And it's very risky, very dangerous. According to the United Nations statistics, at least 2,000 Gazans were killed while they are trying to arrive to the what's called GHF to ask aid. Only in 3 months. So it's a horrible number. 2,000 Palestinians were killed in 3 months just while they are trying to arrive to the human aid. But why the Palestinians are still coming there every day despite this large number of victims? And they know, the people who know, they know that it's very risky. It's very possible he will never return to his children. This tells us the story of the despair. The Palestinians, the Gazans, don't have any choice, any other choice. I lived under that circumstances for maybe a year and 10 months. And I saw how the fathers, how the people don't find even a flour, as example, or rice, or one meal to feed their children. So imagine the situation of the people that they don't have any choice but to try. And even when they know that they may be killed there, but they don't have any other choice. And after that, the people disappeared and the buses continued toward Karm Abu Salim. And we were inside Rafah. Rafah, as I mentioned, completely destroyed. And there were thousands of tons of the food distributed and thrown on the streets. My friend told me the people in Al Mawasi need this food strongly. So why? I answered him, we cannot ask the enemy who purposely and on purpose he want to kill you, who want to murder you. He is practicing genocide against you. Why you throw the food here by this large amounts while the people need it? Because Israel want the people to die, wants the people to die of hunger and starvation and rockets and everything. After that, we arrived to Karm Abu Salim, and yes, it's long story. So I just want to focus on some details. When we left Karm Abu Salim, and the Dutch embassy delegation there welcomed us and gave us the visa and also gave us a meal. At that time, I cried. The food is very basic necessity. It's something. It's supposed we we don't talk about it. The people eat. But I remember the children in Gaza. The children in Gaza look to the food as a dream. I listen to my nephews and my nieces and the children around me, and they were talking about their dreams. Their dreams, not only their dreams, only to get a meal. So after that, the bus moved, and it was my first time in my lifetime to enter the occupied Palestine 1948, which becomes Israel. And I'm a refugee, and I am from a family of refugees, like the most of the Palestinians. And the right of return is the common national dream that our grandmothers and mothers talking to us and told us about it for more than 70 years from now. So now I achieved that dream and I saw Palestine, but it's unallowed to me to walk there. I just saw Palestine beyond the glass of the bus. And I looked around, the lands are empty. Only very few areas that you found buildings and neighbors, but the vast majority of the road from Gaza, Abu Salim to Jordan are empty. At that time, I remembered what Dr. Salman Abu Sitta said, that there is lands enough for the Palestinian refugees to return and to live with the Jewish residents there based on human equality. So it's not a matter of there is no land. It's a matter of the colonial greed and the supremacy. They think, or they look at us as we don't deserve to be humans like them. So they first expelled us out from our land, and they are still depriving us from implementing the UN Resolution 194 that the Palestinian refugees have the right to return to their homes. One of the things I noticed also was the scene of the life and the activity very close to Gaza Strip. The Israelis there live their daily routine, and they are driving the cars, and they are building, and they are buying and marketing. So at that time, I asked myself a question, and I put this in the article. So how they can practice their daily life normally while their army is committing crimes just beyond the fence, maybe few kilometers far from here. And those who are now practicing their life, buying, driving, their selves, maybe most of them, or sorry, many of them, they are soldiers. They were maybe yesterday or a few days before inside Gaza killing, and now they are in their evacuation. How they can live with these contradictions Again, it's a matter of dehumanizing the victims, as they look at the Palestinians that they are not humans, so we can kill them. And this what Yoav Gallant said on October 2023 when he described the Palestinians like human animals. So as they look at the Palestinians as human animals, then it's okay to kill them. And when you finish killing them, you can go home and you can show your kindness with your friends and practicing your life normally, and then return to your routine to kill and to practice genocide. So the genocide starts from the mind before from the acts. And this is the problem of this is the root of the problem, the root of the Zionist colonial project from the ideology itself. The ideology itself which dehumanize the Palestinian people and look at the Palestinian people that they are not humans. So their lives don't matter, and we can kill them and we can continue killing them and then practice our life. So there is too much of pain and things we cannot describe by words.
Ahmed, you are now physically safe in the Netherlands, but as you emphasize when you speak and in your writing, 2 million people are still facing death in Gaza as this genocide continues. And talk about that contradiction that you're facing now of feeling that safety. And of course, you know exactly what they're living. Do you want to share anything about what you went through and how you lived these past 2 years during this genocide in Gaza?
Yes, exactly, dear Ali. It's a very complicated feeling. From one side, to feel that you are safe. And we talk about the very simple things. We don't imagine that I drink a cup of coffee. This was a dream in Gaza. And you know, dear Ali, we talked each other about this interview on February, so 7 months ago. We didn't even find opportunity to make this interview, to have good access to internet and to have a quiet place like this, as the most of the buildings were destroyed in Gaza, including my apartment and the house of my family. We don't find any quiet place. We don't find access to internet. We don't find a cup of coffee. When one of the, I will mention some few things, simple things relating to how the people, including me, until August 27th, how we live, how our life in Gaza looks like. When you want to charge your mobile, you have to schedule for the next day morning and go to one of the people who have the solar units, then charge it and pay for charging, and then keep it for the energy to the next day. And when I was living in a tent, when I was, as example, I want to take a shower, I have to think about one of my friends who are still live in their houses, and this is very rare, as the most of the people no longer live in houses, and then call him, and is that time works with you, then I can come to your house for 20 minutes and then take a shower. And when I want to drink a cup of tea at morning, I have to walk for 10 minutes just to get hot water, boiling water, then quickly return to the home before it it become cold again, then drink the tea. The children, when you look at the children and they dream to get a good meal, and you feel painful inside yourself, but you cannot help them. When you look at the people, the fathers, they don't have in their wallets money for their children. I don't want to speak about the big things when some of people were injured or were murdered. The drones, the buzzing of the drone in the sky, 24 hours. Imagine one night I felt it's inside the tent. It's very annoying. My wish at that time was just to stop this annoying sound, to stop just 1 hour. And when it stopped 1 hour, I felt comfortable. Now, personally, I'm in very quiet place near the river. I'm very grateful to Allah about this. And I ask the people here, why you are not grateful? You have to feel grateful towards what you call routine, what you call something maybe boring for you, because you cannot imagine the life without it, without electricity, without shower. Now I can take shower anytime I decide. I can charge my mobile anytime. I have good access to internet to interview, to make this interview. So I'm not worried now that the internet may go. So I ask the people, why not? You have to feel grateful, deep grateful about this, about what you live. But yes, as you mentioned, you feel kind of betrayal when you live safe and live with food, with shower, with electricity, while your people, your father, your siblings are still facing that horrible situation inside Gaza. Dear Ali, believe me, I think that no words to talk, no words. The language itself is crippled. I cannot find any words to talk about the situation in Gaza. I can say to you the situation in Gaza is very, very, very horrible, horrible, horrible. But this cannot bring the reality to the imagination of the people outside of Gaza. Outside of Gaza, you have struggles every day in Gaza, and this is not by nature. This is by Israel, by the civilized country in the Middle East, Israel, which backed from the United States administration and the European governments, backed by weapons, by money, by political coverage. So what's happening in Gaza? It's a scandal. scandal of the world. It's the point that we have to say that the international community, the international system lost any kind of legitimacy. I think the most important thing the world may make after this genocide that the international system itself has to be changed. What it means when Trump imposed the ICC, and this means that Trump says clearly that the power is more important than the human rights, more important than the international law. No international law. The international law, we can put it under our feet if it's not fit us and our interests. So it's a scandal. What's happening is a scandal. Our pain in Gaza is very deep, very horrible. No words, no language to describe it. At the same time, I think this international system has to be changed. It's very necessary for the coming generations, and to ban this kind of atrocities, to be committed in Palestine and in other countries, and for the next generations, that the world knows that this international system has to be changed. We need a world with human rights first, international law first, the international law above all the countries and above all the governments.
Ahmed, I hope you won't mind if I share a message that you wrote to me in July.
Yeah.
When the starvation in Gaza, which Israel imposed, was escalating severely. And you wrote to me, I started to do something I never did before. I started to count my steps and my movement to keep the little energy which I got from the little food, and to use that energy in other activities like writing.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, this was the reality. This was the reality. And now, as I became a bit far from that experience, I see clearly how it was horrible. Yes, I arrived to that situation that I cannot even feel that I have energy even to walk. Sometimes I was waking up at morning and I feel hungry. And I have money, alhamdulillah. And I know there is something I can buy 2 or 3 kilometers far from me, but I don't have energy to walk. So I prefer to stay because I don't have energy. This is the situation of 2 million people. I saw many of the people, the professors, the elite in Gaza, and their faces paled, and they lost their weight. I stopped to share my selfie or my photos for 2 years, as I felt that after the burns and after I was injured and after the starvation, my face paled and I lost my weight. The first time I shared my photo with one of my family out of Gaza was in the airport of Amman. I sent my photo for my sister in Egypt, and she responded me by a message, by a vocal. She was crying. She was crying. This is you, Ahmed. They they didn't keep anything of you. And yes, finally, I'm lucky. I survived. But what about the 2 million people still trapped in that? So again, dear Ali, no words to describe the horrible situation. But the most important thing to say is a scandal of the world. What's happening in Gaza is a scandal. They are lying. They are claiming that we are fighting Hamas, we are fighting Hamas. They murdered 20,000 children. They destroyed 85% of the houses of Gaza. They destroyed the hospitals, the universities. Complete cities were wiped out from the map. So what is Hamas? Their problem is with the Palestinian people himself, the Palestinian existence itself. This is the problem of the Israeli colonial project. And this is clear. Why? And as example, when the Great March of Return happened in 2018, and it was completely non-violent, completely with peaceful ways, but Israel repressed it and murdered at least 220 of the non-violent protesters and injured more than 30,000 of the protesters. And now, when the ICC, as example, condemned Israel and issued a warrant against the criminals like Netanyahu and Gallant, then Trump, the friend of Israel, punish the ICC. What this means? That this means Israel says to us as Palestinians and to the world, we will not allow for you to resist. We will not allow to you to express yourself. No matter you use the non-violence, you use the violent resistance, you use the diplomatic ways, no matter, we will fight you. And the only thing we will be okay with it to remove the Palestinian people itself.
Ahmed, toward the end of your article that you wrote for the Dutch newspaper, you write, "I have survived genocide. My body is no longer in Gaza, yet I have left behind a part of myself." Talk about what you mean by that.
Yeah. Yes, I left my soul there. I left my son Abdullah, the grave of my son Abdullah. I left it in Gaza, and I wasn't able to visit the grave of Abdullah for 1.5 years since the Israeli invasion of Rafah. The cemetery is in Rafah. So from that time, Rafah became under the complete Israeli army control, and it's unallowed for anyone to arrive there. I heard that they leveled the cemetery to the ground, but no one can arrive there and make sure about this. But yes, and also even the very few belongings of Abdullah, I left them in Gaza. I was not able to save them out of Gaza. When the Dutch embassy told us about the departure, they said that the Israeli condition not to accompany anything with you. After Abdullah was murdered, I collected his belongings in a special room in my apartment, his clothes and toys, and put them as a memory uh, to keep his memory alive. But only 3 or 4 months later, the Israeli colonial criminals invaded that neighborhood and destroyed tens of the buildings, including the building of my apartment, which contains 22 apartments. All of them were destroyed, everything gone, including the belongings of Abdullah. Just there was the copy of Quran of Abdullah and his comb were out of the apartment at that time with my laptop bag out of the apartment. So they are still with me. And I kept them inside my bag until the day of departure. So when they told me that you cannot to take them out of Gaza, and after I left Gaza, and I remember that I broke down in tears. That even the very few belongings of Aboud, I cannot take them with me. I asked myself, I passed horrible experience for 2 years. Then I collapse now about something maybe simple, for simple reason. But I think the reason because it's a matter of repressed feelings. In Gaza, we don't find time even to cry for our loved people. Imagine for 2 years, I didn't find time to cry, Abdullah. And I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I lost Abdullah. Abdullah is my soul. But there are mothers and fathers lost 3 and 4 and 5 of their children. Again, there are no words to describe the situation in Gaza.
There are really no words, Ahmed, but just to listen to you is a privilege, and to be able to tell you how much we love you and how happy we are that you survived this genocide, in order to be able to tell people in the world what is happening, and that you shouldn't have to do that. After all you've been through, you should be able to rest, to mourn, to cry. Within days of coming out of Gaza, an experience that no words can describe, you already wrote this incredible article to tell this truth and record so that no one can deny this Holocaust. And
Thanks, dear Ali.
and I know that on behalf of everyone who's watching and listening, everyone wants to say thank you, offer their condolences for Abdullah.
Abdullah is not alone. Yes, Abdullah is one of 20,000 children were murdered. This is enough to say, and to say how this world, which allows for the Zionist colonial regime to do these horrible things, how this is very ugly world. And I want just to mention something, dear Ali, that your support means too much for me. I feel powerful. when I feel the love and feel the support from you. So thank you for this. And yes, I survived, but the horrible experience is still in Gaza.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you for being willing to talk about such painful experiences and realities. I'm looking forward to meet you soon,
I
inshallah.
hope that, inshallah. Yeah.
And on behalf of all of us, we wish you that you hear silence, that you see the river, that you have time to think, to breathe, and that you'll be reunited with your loved ones who are outside Gaza soon. Above all, we want to see an end to this genocide.
Yeah.
We want everyone in Gaza to be safe. We want every child in Gaza to grow up in a world that's safe for them. And that's what we'll continue to work for. Thank you, dear Ahmed. God
Thanks,
bless
dear
you.
Ali, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much,
It's
Ahmed.
our honor.
Thanks, Nora.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just the unbearable compounding layers of grief for so much and for so many.
And yeah, I think all we can do is listen to Ahmed and others who tell their stories of survival and just try to absorb the enormity of it and continue to do our work, to continue to speak out, to march, to demand the strike in Italy. I know that inspired and boosted people so much all over the world this week that we saw in the news report. And the flotilla that's on its way to Gaza, we're going to talk more about that later. And that's what we can do, as well as doing our best as people are doing to support people directly in Gaza. That's definitely part of it, but it is stopping this genocide and changing the world. As Ahmed said, a world that tolerates this, a world where law means nothing, is not one that will survive for any of us. This isn't just about Gaza. A world where this can happen is not safe for anyone.
No. Thank you. I'm really grateful that Ahmed was able to come on and share his experiences with us, as always.
And I hope his article, you know, for those who read Dutch, it's an extraordinary article. You can get a pretty decent machine translation. It holds up well. There it is in De Correspondant. Probably searching De Correspondant and Ahmed Abu Artema is probably the easiest way to find it if you're not a Dutch speaker. And I hope and I believe it will be published in other languages soon. It's really an extraordinary account. And I think seeing and hearing Ahmed tell us some of that and more, there's a lot that he said in this discussion that is not in the article that I heard for the first time. And yeah.
Thanks for that. Let's bring Jon on. Hi, Jon. Hey.
Hey. Very moving show.
Yeah, it's a tough one today.
Yeah. And it's great to see you, Ali, and all our love to your family, to your father, and to Ahmed's family as well. And happy birthday, Rafat.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jon.
Oh, what a week. Jon, a lot has happened. There was a strike yesterday in Rashash, that is also called Eilat by Yemeni armed forces. A lot to talk about this week. Why don't you just take it away?
All right, let's do it. So you are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I am Jon Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 720 of Israel's genocide and day 10 of the Second Battle of Gaza City. Let's take a look at the maps here because the Battle of Gaza City involves the ethnic cleansing of the city. These are the maps I've been showing you over the last few weeks by the International Organization of Migration. You're looking at a map on the screen here with dozens of arrows pointing from neighborhoods in Gaza City down into the south, into the Mawasi area, which is already overcrowded, and into the middle camps area in Dar al-Bala, which is also overcrowded and there's no room for people. The number we see on the screen here from the International Organization of Migration is that 328,000 people had left. That was as of Monday of this week. They have updated this number to 388,000 as of this morning. And that number greatly differs from the number that the Israeli military said. On Wednesday, Army Radio reported that the Southern Command estimates 700,000 people have left Gaza City so far, which they said is a significant number and allows them freedom of movement and maneuvering in Gaza City. According to their estimates, 200,000 to 300,000 people will remain in Gaza City. That's the number that the IDF anticipates. The Operation Gideon's Chariots Part 2, the attack on Gaza City began last Monday. Between Monday and Thursday, the first 3.5 days of this operation, the Israelis boasted about 1,200 airstrikes, just airstrikes, as I always say. That does not include all the other forms of munitions that are dropped on Gaza. Today, they announced 170 airstrikes in the past 24 hours. So a operational tempo to and massacres of people fleeing, massacres in the camps that Nora covered in the news report, which I highly recommend people check out for the humanitarian context. A devastating situation unfolding in Gaza City right now, all over Palestine, all over Gaza, because of the movement of people and the lack of resources that those people have to move, debilitating lack of fuel. People have lost all their belongings. There's no currency in Gaza. The banks have been long destroyed, so there's no currency for people to travel. Costs thousands of dollars to travel to get a new tent set up in an area where there's not enough room for people. So this is the migration out of Gaza City. We're going to start in the south this week, though. Check out this first map that you're familiar with from southern Gaza. There was an operation this week in Rafah, right near, actually right pretty much where the Rafah is on that map there, located right above the Philadelphia corridor, which divides Egypt and Gaza. There was an operation that targeted, well, first of all, let me just say about Rafah. We know this because we've been following it for 2 years. We know that the Israeli military said that the Rafah brigade was defeated in August of 2024. In March of this year, when Israel reneged on the ceasefire by carrying out a massacre in the middle of the night of more than 400 people, half of them children who are at home asleep in their beds during a ceasefire that was guaranteed by international brokers, including the United States, ostensibly the most powerful country in the world. These kids were massacred in their beds, and the war resumed. The ceasefire and prisoner exchange ended. At that time, the IDF went back into Rafah and said at the time that the goal of the Golani Brigade in Rafah was to defeat the Rafah Brigade. So 9 months later, still trying to defeat the Rafah Brigade, and we've saw that at the early stages of Gideon's Chariots Part 1. Let's take a look at number 2, because you can see the outcome of this operation for there was 4 operations in a single day in Rafah late last week. The final one left 7 IDF casualties, 4 killed, and at least 1 others seriously wounded. You're looking at an excavator that is usually used to drop Palestinian homes, here holding up the destroyed IDF Humvee, American IDF Humvee, as all of Israel's tools for the most part are. This happened just above the Philadelphia corridor, as I said, and once this operation happened, the IDF admitted that that was the 4th engagement of the day. They had been targeted 3 other times in Rafah on that day of the operation alone. And that operation was at 9:30 a.m. So before 9:30 a.m., up to 9:30 a.m., 4 resistance operations in Rafah targeting these units forced the IDF spokesperson to sort of sheepishly say there are underground infrastructure that remains in the area that has not been neutralized. The fighters were able to navigate through the ethnically cleansed, completely destroyed territory in Rafah to get all the way to the south of Rafah and carry out a qualitative operation, killing 4 soldiers. You can look at the number 3 has the same. That's the Jeep, the Humvee before. So Channel 12 tried to do an investigation to understand what happened. They did it with the IDF, and they had an IDF source who said that he had watched over and over the drone footage trying to understand how the fighters were able to plant the explosives on this route. Obviously, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, again, by Qassam and the resistance factions are dialed in on this one. And the report from Channel 12 from the IDF soldier who had been staring at the drone images was that the Palestinian fighters were able to cloak themselves and the weapon in a way that the drone didn't pick up. Now, we have seen these movements by Qassam shrouding themselves and moving across the battlefield before. So this is an example of that in Rafah. But let's move up to Gaza City, where the main battle is. This is the map that you're familiar with. Right now, the Israelis are pushing on Tel El Hawa in the southwest of Gaza City. Zaytun was a month ago's operation, destroying Zaytun. And then Gideon's Chariots Part 1 flattened Shujaiya, Tufa, Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia, Jabalia Camp, which is north of Jabalia City that you see there. And now the Israeli military has 3 divisions in Gaza City. One division, the 162, is pushing in from the east across Shujaiya into Gaza City. The 98th Division from the north, pushing down south on the western side of Jabalia into the Shati refugee camp, where the Israeli military has not operated since February of 2024, the first few months of the war. That's the same with Gaza City. Israel said they had conquered Gaza City, like all other places that they say they conquered and did not. Is what the story is for Gaza City. Because we can remember back at late 2023 that Israel was using their armored vehicles to put Star of David's in the main square in Gaza City. They hung a menorah up during the Christmas and the holidays, in just as a thumb in the eye of Palestinians in Gaza City. They took photos in the Palestinian Legislative Council. They sacked Shifa Hospital. All of these things we remember from the first battle of Gaza City. So let's take a look at the first operation. The Israelis went into Tel El Hawa and were immediately hit. We see fighters again with eyes on 2 Merkava tanks. We see the fighter here with what looks like a brand new Yassin, newly lathed Yassin, it looks like, warhead here. And this is going to be an elevated Yassin 105 strike. You can see a dead hit on the turret. The Israeli military, before this video came out, had admitted that the commander of this tank, a company commander in the 7th Armored Brigade, 77th Battalion, had been killed in this operation. his soldiers were shown the next day saluting their commander who was killed, all with their backs to the camera, because at this point in the genocide, the Israeli military knows that you can't show your faces while committing genocide. So while saluting their commander, they all had their faces hidden and were looking away as if they had turned their backs on him. Not sure that was their intention, but that's what happens when you are committing a genocide and the world is trying to bring justice for that. There was also a major operation in Sheikh Radwan 2 days ago, where fighters were identified at a few meters away from an Israeli position in a close range, close quarters battle, face-to-face firefight, during which time IDF platoon commander who was leading the forces was seriously wounded in that operation. A sniper operation today killed an Israeli soldier. So the territorial battalions that we've been talking about all throughout the war are immediately present. They were immediately present in Zaytun when that operation started. They're immediately present in Sheikh Radwan when that operation started. The same, the Shati camp, Jabalia. You're going to see operations from Jabalia later on in the show. So 𝐐𝐿, as Israel pushed into the center of Gaza City this week, put up a warning to the Israelis, number 4C here. It's the POW warning them about their POWs, saying that as you were previously warned, saying to the Israelis, the more you expand the scope of your criminal operations in the city of Gaza, the greater the danger is to your prisoners. They also released a poster this week that showed the 48 captives that are still in Gaza, the 20 living ones, all soldiers, and showed their faces on the posters. And underneath each one, it said Ron Arad 1, Ron Arad 2, and so on. And Ron Arad was a Israeli fighter pilot, a weapons officer on a fighter jet, who in 1986 was on a mission in dropping bombs on Lebanon. One of those bombs failed to detonate as it dropped, and it blew the plane up. And the pilot was rescued by the Israelis, but Ron Arad, the weapons officer, disappeared. And his body was never found, and the place where his body is buried was never found. And this was a major story in Israel, dating back to 1986, that everyone in Israel knows. So when you write a poster that says Ron Arad number 1, Ron Arad number 2, and so on, you're saying that the fate of these captives will follow the same fate as Ron Arad. But as we know, Netanyahu does not care about the POWs, but it's interesting to see these psychological operations that 𝐶𝐿 has waged at the beginning of this war. You can see there the neighborhood of Tel El-Hawa there and Ramal in central Gaza City. The core, the real downtown core of Gaza City is what we are talking about. So number 5 shows the ethnic cleansing of Gaza City. A lot of people probably saw footage of how packed the waterfront area was in Gaza City. Tents all along the water, all along the pier there in the harbor. They're packed with people. And one of the primary tools that Israel used, besides their aerial massacres, besides their helicopter gunship massacres, naval and artillery shelling, suicide drones, burning people alive in their tents with grenades dropped from quadcopters. But the real principal one that we've seen in Gaza City particularly is the use of these M113 armored personnel carriers that are basically tank bombs, tracked vehicles, armored vehicles, stuffed with explosives, many more explosives than fit into the largest Israeli bomb that they've been setting off in these urban areas to try to scare the population, to destroy large numbers of housing blocks at one time. And so, followers of this war will know that we've been tracking these M113s all through the war since we first saw them in Khan Yunis just a few months into the war in early 2024. But Gideon's Chariots Part 1 really saw a major upscaling of the use of these tank bombs these APC bombs. The Palestinians call them robot bombs. And Gideon's Chariots Part 2 as even more so. And this week was the first time that Israel's military censor acknowledged these, and it was acknowledged for the first time through Army Radio. We'll talk more about that coming up. Let's take a look at what one of those bombs looked like. You saw one from Nora today, but this one in Jabalia camp from a few days ago. The military can send them into those alleyways that they're too afraid to go in with their troops, and that they can carry these armored vehicles can carry several times the tonnage of the heaviest Israeli bomb. Just some examples. Civil Defense on September 3rd said that Israeli forces had detonated more than 100 of these over the previous week. The Euromed tracking of this, field officer tracked 15 of these in a day are some of these numbers. Army Radio talks about 20 of them in a few hours. So they're very heavily using these weapons. And you can see the massive impact about that. Army Radio said that these tank bombs are catching quite a bit of attention in Gaza, as they would. Many tons of explosives going off. It creates a massive plume that you can see all over Gaza. They reported that you can hear it shaking inside Israel as well. And Army Radio pointed out straight up that the scale of these attacks has accelerated the population evacuation from Gaza City. So they're using these terror bombings to get people out of Gaza City. You can see another one, number 7. You can see it from the soldiers' perspective here, because the soldiers know it's coming, so they can record these videos. And you can see here, there's a twin one. Nora showed one today as well that was a twin one. They set them off at the same time. This footage is from the Genocide Tracker on Twitter. Genocide Tracker is a Twitter account that began in 2024, early in the war, that scans Israeli social media accounts related to their Gaza deployments, and it creates profiles for each of these soldiers, their names, their military units, for the war crimes trial. So shout out to Tracking Genocide. We're going to use a few of their videos in this show today, but I want to show you the vehicle itself. I pulled this video from Raphael. This is from the Israeli Defense Company, and this is them showing this vehicle off. They have 5,000 of them that were given to them by the Americans. These are outdated armored personnel carriers that would get shredded on the battlefield fighting Qassam, but they're advertising these as up armored. And you can see in the back, they can hold up to a dozen. Some versions of them have 15 soldiers in the back, but you can see that space in the back in the cabin can be completely, all the chairs, all the seats can be moved out of them, and Israel can put several different ways of putting explosives inside them. We'll see them as the show goes on, but they have form-fit crates that go into the back that they can then roll on, roll off. For those, they also use bags. They just fill up bags that are hung through the hatches to fill up that cabin with, like I said, the cabin can carry 10 tons. Its combat weight of 10 tons. And a Mark 84 2,000-pound bomb is the largest bomb in the Israeli arsenal. So you're talking many times, several times over the heaviest bomb, and it's set inside these armored vehicles. So they pack a significant punch. So Army Radio this week said that they are, quote, breaking the silence on the M113s on Sunday. The system, they said that the entire city of Gaza is talking about, no doubt the city of Gaza is talking about it, because previously these were mostly used in already ethnically cleansed areas. They're used because they're scared to fight the resistance in the alleys, so they send these vehicles in to blow up entire buildings. The Israeli justification is that it trips booby-trapped buildings, but of course this is far more than tripping booby traps. The Israeli Army Radio said, in recent days, the system has been operated in the Gaza Strip on a completely industrial scale, dozens of times a day, mainly at night. It has so far destroyed thousands of buildings in the Gaza Strip in general and in Gaza City in particular, and is estimated to have neutralized thousands of explosives. This system, a senior officer said, this system has become the most dramatic combat means we use in Gaza. The directive of the Southern Command, that's the IDF regional command for Gaza, said this system must be operational 100% of the time for any mission. The IDF has considered submitting the system, these M113 robot bombs, as a candidate for the Israel Security Award. So they're super proud of this, as they would be. A senior IDF officer told Army Radio, imagine what 100 such robotic APCs can do, entering the train before our forces, opening the way for it. This is the future battlefield, and we will be the first in the world to do it. So these guys are super proud of their terror bombings, of their tanks that their big brother, the United States, gave them as hand-me-downs for free. According to the military balance, Israelis have 5,000 of these. And last year, they tried to sell these vehicles on to other countries. And that's what you're seeing in this Raphael video that I found, because this is the Israelis saying, we can take these old, outdated armored personnel carriers and we can up-armor them. We can make them safer for you and sell them to Ukraine or whatever. But obviously, in the years since then, they've decided that it's much better off to just use these as terror bombings and use them as a massive tracked vehicle bomb. So let's take a look. I went through the Resistance Report archives and I found the times we've seen them. This is a good look from Nusrat in 2024. You can see the system, the unmanned system on the top, and you can see on the front there that has an automatic 50 cal machine gun. So there's multiple of these systems that they use. They also use them to hump explosives. So they, back in the era when Israel was using anti-tank mines to blow up houses, these would shuttle the anti-tank mines in. And again, the Army Radio story brags about these. They think this is the future of warfare too. Lethal robot APCs equipped with a firing system. Such a system can roam freely through the alleys of the Gaza Strip, identifying terrorists and firing at them. This kind of mobile see and shoot position at the start of the war, the first days of the maneuver, the IDF deployed a few such lethal robot APCs. So this is obviously what we're seeing right now from the resistance. The resistance caught this before anyone else had seen this, because they were in areas that had been ethnically cleansed. And of course, there is a history of unmanned vehicles. Israel uses unmanned D9 armored bulldozers to destroy houses as well. And these vehicles that you're looking at right there, the M113, has a history itself in Gaza. Two of them were blown up in 2004 and killed everyone on board of both of them. And the Israelis blamed Adnan al-Ghul for the bombs that blew those up, and he was assassinated shortly after that. And the beginning of the 2014 war in Shujaiya, the Israelis sent one of these into Shujaiya, and it was destroyed as soon as it touched the ground. All soldiers inside killed, and one taken captive. And of course, we also saw them. I showed you a bunch of videos from Lebanon throughout the war where we saw them being used by the Israelis behind the lines, like in northern Israel. But because the long-range anti-tank guided missile systems that Hezbollah had, they were sailing their missile system. The Almas was chasing down these behind the front lines, which is what they're used for. We also saw them captured on October 7th because Israel uses them to shuttle, like a battlefield bus or a battlefield shuttle is what they're used for. We can look at the next one. This was in Khan Yunis. This was actually the first time we ever saw them. This is in early February 2024. And fighters saw them here. There you can see the one from the back. And the massive explosions on those definitely suggest they are holding explosives, possibly not the same explosives that they're using right now, but maybe this is an anti-tank mine era. There's a second one we're going to see get hit by the resistance. And this raised eyebrows at the time when we saw this, because we weren't sure what these outdated vehicles were doing on the battlefield. Again, you can see that one pretty clearly loaded with explosives from that blast. These are aluminum alloy vehicles. They don't have the strength of regular armored personnel carriers. Let's look at the one from Jenin, number 11. or sorry, this is from Rafah, Al Junaina neighborhood in Rafah, and they caught one. �𝐞 caught one. They probably just guessing here, but they probably intercepted the signal that it drives on, just like they intercept the signal that the drones fly on in order to drop them. And there you can see, so they're loaded. They have these explosives loaded into bags that are dumped. You can see it at the back there. Massive bag fills the whole cabin. And this fighter is telling, you can see there, yeah, perfect. You can see it there. This fighter saying, they fight us with remotely operated vehicles full of explosives. This is a paraphrase. But we tell you, fight us face to face. Fight us with your soldiers. We'll drown you in the sands of Gaza, he says as he's shaking his pliers that he's uncutting them. We will dismantle your vehicles of explosives. Your soldiers are too afraid to fight us. So you can see there, after you saw from the Raphael demo of the size of the vehicle, now you can see how much explosives are put into them. Not sure that anyone would recommend doing what this fighter is doing, but he did it, and he disabled it, and presumably they're able to then use those explosives. So that was in Rafah in August, and I think, do we see one more? 13. Yeah, one more in Rafah here. You can see this is from above. You can see that this is probably one humping supplies to soldiers, because watch, when the impact is significantly less than when they're loaded with ammunition, with explosives of whatever kind. But the resistance has been all over these. Israel military censor broke down this week and said, oh, we have this new innovation, but the resistance has been showing this. Here's a hand-delivered one we're watching. Again, don't think that these aren't recommended methods, considering the amount of explosives in there, but he's got an extra long fuse, and you can see that he clearly gets back home safe to his base before before his guerrilla action device detonates that vehicle. So the resistance has been all over this. This was again in Rafah in the summer. I think I've lost what number I'm on tomorrow. 13? Yeah. Number 13, this is in Jabalia. You can see this. This is during the general's plan to ethnically cleanse the north. You can see the resistance has spotted it and hit it with a Yasin. And you can see that explosion looks very similar to the ones we watched and the ones Nora showed. So the resistance intercepting that one. So this was during the general's plan, and 2 days before Dr. Hussam Abu Safia was captured from Kamal Adwan Hospital, he wrote that on Tuesday, December 24th, yesterday, for the first time, robots advanced near the hospital, he said, posing a significant danger due to their proximity. They were very close, and they detonated explosives. As a result, the partitions and the doors of the hospital were destroyed. The destruction was horrific. The hospital departments, 20 people were injured, including 5 medical personnel. Dr. Abu Safia is a pediatrician who was 2 days later disappeared by the Israelis, and he is still in Israeli custody as we speak. A little bit later, actually in October of this year, Dr. Abu Safia was 2024. And then later in the month, we saw Sarah al-Quds fighters in Beit Hanun talking about, as they're setting a barrel bomb, talking about the fighters. The fighters said, "We will never abandon our positions. They came at us with robots," which is, again, he means these M113 APC suicide bombs, but we will never retreat. So the resistance has been all over these on the battlefield for the full 2 years of this war, and that's what we're seeing. Number 14 shows the industrial scale here. This is a photo from Al Jazeera, and this is what really caught the soldiers' attention, is that Gideon's chariots too, these were all seen lined up along the border. We saw these, and soldiers took pictures of them and shared them on social media. And this is the industrial scale that Army Radio is talking about. You can see it on the next slide as well. Again, another genocide tracker video from the Israelis. So look at that. It's just truck after truck, as far as you can see, loaded up with these APCs. The Jerusalem Post had a story that said that on acting orders of the IDF's Southern Command Chief, these deployments of vehicles has surged, with officers in the field reporting their usage has tripled. Forces on the ground testified to the movement of hundreds of these explosive-laden vehicles towards the Gaza border. This method protects our forces ahead of the ground incursion and enables faster movement, one of the officers said. Over time, the techniques for operating these vehicles have emerged, ranging from towing them into position and to using robots. More recently, reports have surfaced regarding the development of explosive barrels. This is what I was telling you, that fit perfectly inside the back to maximize them. And the Jerusalem Post, this story is from, said that the intensity of the explosions can be heard 100 kilometers from Gaza. This is the complete industrial scale application of these weapons. We can look at number 16 because you can watch them now. So you see them on the truck. Here's the soldier showing you unloading them off the truck. And then the soldiers are going to watch as they deploy them here, destroying Palestinian homes and cheering it, because they're the TikTok army who don't want to fight, who just want to massacre civilians and destroy any semblance of life and society in the Gaza Strip. None of their hero stories from battle for 2 years have involved conflict, involved fighting. They all involve dressing up in captured clothing, playing on children's tricycles, and blowing up schools and people's homes, burning them, various different ways that we've all seen the TikTok army operate. Let's look at number 17, because there was also an operation in Jabalia. You can see the fighters here wrapping up the Shawad, the Qassam built explosively formed penetrator, a large one here. And as the fighters are preparing it, they're reciting a poem from Tamim al-Barghouti, who is a prominent Palestinian poet from a prominent Palestinian literary family. It's just another example of what we've seen all throughout the war, of these fighters expressing themselves in nuanced and culturally significant ways that transcend the operation itself. And a good catch by Tamara, the poem is called Nasheed Morid by Tamim al-Barghouti. It translates as a disciple's anthem, is the poem that these fighters are reciting. And we've seen them doing this all the time. We've seen it on the walls. We've seen them write it on their weapons. We've seen them talking it out as they go. These fighters are deeply ingrained in the national project. And here the EFP is going to target those two Merkava tanks that you see, the red triangles drop on them. And it looks like it gets both of them. If you look to the left is where the explosion is going to happen. It looks like it blows pieces off the second one while targeting the first one. So a devastating hit in Jabalia. This operation was from earlier in September. A successful operation was executed in Jabalia. Now, just one quick note before we go on Yemen. As Nora said, the Yemeni resistance was able to target Eilat multiple times this week. 3 times drones got through this week. One yesterday left up to 20 people wounded in Israel, although usually the breakdown of those numbers are that 17 of them were just stressed out by this, but they count that as a casualty in Israel. Earlier in the week, we saw a Yafa drone hit Eilat and fly all the way over Eilat. So clearly they're penetrating Israeli air defenses in Eilat, and the Israelis bombed Yemen today in response. So we will be following the Yemeni front as we also follow the battle for Gaza City. But that is the resistance report for day 720 of Israel's genocidal war on Gaza.
Thank you so much, Jon. I mean, just those, I really appreciate your meticulous walkthrough of how these APCs are transformed into these car bombs, and how they're being used to just again, like you said, the most cowardly.
It's the most
army.
Cowardly.
It's amazing
in a war of cowardice.
Yeah.
And I received a message this morning from one of our colleagues and friends in northern Gaza who just evacuated their home because one of these things pulled up next to their building.
Oh, Jesus.
And so they instill terror, and they are terror. And, I don't think people can understand it, the scale of it, really, without that kind of in-depth explanation, John. So I'm really grateful for that, because these things are massive, 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 massively destructive bombs that are being used for the sole and explicit purpose of targeting civilian neighborhoods and destroying them for no remotely defensible military purpose. This is just pure criminality for the sake of criminality.
Yeah.
And it's also because they have such an influx. They have too many gifts from their American allies that are they're co-fighters in this war. I mean, it on so many levels, these point to just what Israel is. Just having these to be able to just use them for whatever. And now that everyone in Gaza knows them and are terrified of them, they'll just drive them through a neighborhood to get rid of that neighborhood because the terror has been inflicted.
And that's what appears to have happened in this case. They may have eventually blown it up, but according to the account I received directly, the thing just went and parked in everyone's clear view, and that was a way to ethnically cleanse the neighborhood. People saw it, and they got their kids out. People are not going to leave their kids and their elders there when one of these things rolls up. So it's a weapon of pure terror against civilians.
And it's several times. We've watched 2,000-pound bombs and seen what they do. This is the explosive capacity of several of those in one place on the ground level detonating up. So it's really, and the fact that they bragged about it, I mean, we should be used to it at this point, but just to be so proud of their cowardice and to embed it in their military doctrine, this cowardice.
Yeah. Sick and savage. We have a couple of things that we want to talk about. Ali, as you alluded to earlier in our interview with Ahmed, there are these, I think now, 130 countries have done this recognition of a so-called Palestinian state, and the corporate media and all of these pundits and people involved with the Palestinian Authority, of course, are touting it as, this major milestone, a political victory for Palestinians. What is at the core here? How are we to understand and analyze what these recognitions mean and what they are in place of politically?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this, actually, but maybe, Asa, why don't you, just to bring people up to date, why don't you take us through some of the media you've put together, and then we'll talk about it, because I do have thoughts about this for sure.
I can't wait.
Yeah, sure. Well, of course, I mean, I think most of our viewers will know that several states this week announced that they were recognizing the Palestinian Authority as the state of Palestine. So, it's not anything really new in, there's lots of states around the world that already recognize the Palestinian Authority as the state of Palestine. But it was new in the sense of the states that did it. So some of Israel's most adamant allies have recognized now the Palestinian Authority as the so-called state of Palestine. So first of all, there was Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, and he declared in this in a speech that was posted to Twitter I think we'll spare you the actual speech.
Thank you for that.
It was quite boring. Basically, there was a lot of condemnation of Palestinian resistance, demanding that the so-called hostages are returned, and so on and so forth. And then at the end, he said that we recognise the state of Palestine. That was in essence what he said, and of course we know 𝐓𝐿 𝐄𝐥𝐿 is one of Israel's most adamant allies. Infamously, at the start of the genocide, said that Israel has that right to to besiege the Gaza Strip, to deprive Palestinians of water, electricity, petrol, and so forth. Yeah. Secondly,
what are some of the conditions that he placed on the recognition, though, Asa? You mentioned, I mean, and they all, we can talk about Keir Starmer, but it was all coordinated. So France, Australia, Canada, the UK, and a few others, they all said the same things. They all, it's, yeah, I guess we can.
Yeah, it's conditional recognition on releasing the hostages, essentially, as they put it. Which are,
and Hamas can have no role in the future Palestinian state.
Yeah, which has to be disarmed. Yeah,
has to be disarmed.
Yeah,
and so one wonders what are they recognizing? I mean, we associate recognition with an independent state, but if Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese of Australia and Keir Starmer and Mark Carney of Canada get to decide who can actually govern the state, then it's not independent, and you're not recognizing anything.
Plus, like geographically, show us a map of this so-called state of Palestine.
Yeah, it's the West Bank and Gaza.
It's not even all the West Bank. It's archipelago West Bank.
Well, right? I mean, Britain, for example, had a map. I haven't put. Maybe I should have put this in the doc.
Where there's a whole section missing.
The map is
north and south. Yeah.
They changed it from West Bank Palestinian territories to Palestine. So it's this kind of surface level recognition and not recognizing the reality of the fact of what the West Bank is. That it's these, as you said, this archipelago of disconnected, surrounded territories which are just completely besieged on a day-to-day basis. We talk to our colleagues and friends in the West Bank, and that's the reality. It's impossible or near impossible for Palestinians to freely travel between there.
Yeah, there's 900 checkpoints right now.
Yeah.
Why don't we look at the statement issued by the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and the Foreign Minister Penny Wong. And this again is typical. So you can apply this to Canada, the UK, France, to all of them. But I think the Australian one really makes the point. So they say, effective today, the 21st of September, Australia formally recognizes the independent and sovereign state of Palestine. So let's see what that means, independent and sovereign. So in doing so, Australia recognizes the legitimate and long-held aspirations of the people of Palestine to a state of their own. Now, what's missing from that sentence? Doesn't use the word rights, aspirations. An aspiration is a wish. So there's no recognition of any Palestinian rights here. It's an aspiration. So no recognition of Palestinian rights, which a fundamental one being the right of return. So Australia's recognition of Palestine today, alongside Canada, the UK, etc., is part of a coordinated international effort to build new momentum for a two-state solution. So that's an admission. The first sentence says, we're recognizing an independent sovereign state. And by the time we get to the third sentence, we're told there is no such thing. It's just a PR effort to build momentum. So this is corporate jargon. And then they say that starting with the ceasefire in Gaza and the release of the hostages taken in the atrocities of October 7, 2023. So this is a restatement of Israel's lies and atrocity propaganda about October 7th. And of course, the so-called hostages who are still there, as John just told us, are prisoners of war, soldiers.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really important point that, they call them hostages, but actually they are prisoners of war. These are all soldiers.
Yeah. So, it's, they say ceasefire in Gaza. They don't use the word genocide, and we'll talk more about that later. Then they say this is part of Australia's long-standing commitment to a two-state solution, which has always been the only path to enduring peace. This is, of course, to try to rewrite history. It is not, and to limit, again, any political possibility to this so-called two-state solution. Why is it the only possible path? Why isn't abolishing this racist, genocidal, colonial entity a path to peace, just as racist, genocidal, apartheid South Africa was abolished and replaced with a democratic state? That would be a path to peace, but we're not allowed to talk about that because, as we'll see more in the statement, the commitment is to Zionism and Jewish and colonial supremacy, not to anything to do with Palestinian rights. Then they say here, the president of the Palestinian Authority. Wait, that's odd. Didn't you in the first sentence just recognize the independent and sovereign state of Palestine? And now we're still talking about the president of the Palestinian Authority. So what? So the first sentence, what did we recognize an independent sovereign state, but now we're talking about the president of the Palestinian Authority. So they've already withdrawn whatever recognition was there. Has restated its recognition of Israel's right to exist. Wow. The first mention of rights, and it's not Palestinians' rights. So this is not a statement recognizing Palestinian right to self-determination and statehood and existence. This is a declaration by the government of Australia of Israel's right to independence and sovereignty and existence, so-called, of course, Israel. There is no such thing in international law of a state having a right to exist. The only thing there is in international law is that people have self-determination. I've made this point before many times. East Germany has no right to exist. It's been abolished because Germany, the people decided to abolish East Germany and reestablish, I should say, I'm trying not to say a greater Reich, but I mean, that's what it is.
That was their choice.
Yeah. So South Vietnam has no right to exist. Who's going to go and fight for South Vietnam's right to exist? There's no such thing. Doesn't exist. Peoples have a right to self-determination. Israel has no right to exist, nor does any other state. So again, the president of the Palestinian non-state has restated the right of Israel to exist, including commitments to hold democratic elections and enact significant reform to finance, governance, and education. And these are code words that go back decades into the Oslo process, which are classic colonial ruses. Because what are we talking about here? The colonial idea, the British colonial idea, as well as other, is that, oh yes, we're going to eventually give these colonies independence when they're ready. But they're not ready now. They're children.
Yeah.
We are the adults. So until they learn self-governance, which we have to rule them. And that's the modern version of that. So they have to have all these reform. And education here is the code word for changing the Palestinian curriculum and making it a Zionist pro-Israeli curriculum, which has been the agenda for decades and decades.
Yeah.
And
then we go on. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, actually, I wanted to make a point about Mahmoud Abbas, but maybe you should finish the letter.
Yeah, I mean, we're almost at the end of it. I just want to go through. So then they say the terrorist organization Hamas must have no role in Palestine. Wait, we just recognized the independent and sovereign state of Palestine.
With
And here's
elections.
the Prime Minister of Australia telling the people of the supposedly independent and sovereign state of Palestine who isn't allowed to rule them, and defining the party that won the last relatively free election in part of Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza Strip, as a terrorist organization. So who gave the Prime Minister of Australia the right to do that and the chutzpah to do it in what purports to be a recognition of Palestinian sovereignty and independence?
Yeah.
And then they say, crucial work is underway across the international community, which means the countries that support Israel and are working with Israel to complete the genocide, to develop a credible peace plan that enables the reconstruction of Gaza. The reconstruction of Gaza, they're talking as if they're proceeding from the point at which the genocide has been completed. So there's nothing in here about stopping the genocide, stopping the murders, the massacres. There's been no mention of the mass murder at this point of what is almost certainly hundreds of thousands of people. That's not mentioned. It's not there. This is outrageous. This is vile. It's absolutely vile.
Yeah,
and then they
it's
say
still
the
ongoing.
leadership of the countries of the Arab League and the United States, Donald Trump, Steve Witkoff, Mark Rubio, maybe Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg, is vital to this task. And the Arab tyrants who are doing business with Israel and who are shielding Israel and who are shooting down attempts to halt the genocide, allowing Israel to fly through their skies to bomb our other Arab countries. Then they say Australia will continue to work with our international partners to help build on today's act of recognition. Now, again, if you read the statement from Mark Carney, the Australian Prime Minister, from Keir Starmer, it's all the same garbage. And what I want to say to people is, don't fall for this for a second. This isn't a step forward. I've had people telling me, oh, but it's a step forward. No, it's not. This is an effort to define Palestinians to define Palestinian rights out of existence. Notice, again, I emphasize this, the only mention of rights in this statement was Israeli rights, so-called Israeli rights. No mention of self-determination, no mention of the right of return, no mention of the right of Palestinian victims of genocide to justice, to restitution. No mention of accountability for the genocide that Australia, Canada, Britain, France, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Germany, not take Germany out because they're not involved in this recognition. All the other countries that are still involved in this genocide, in mass murdering the people of this allegedly independent and sovereign state, that all of these countries who are complicit in this ongoing genocide have not recognized any Palestinian rights. None. What they want to do is take a concentration camp and put a sign on it that says State of Palestine. And if anyone falls for this, I don't know what more we can say at this point, more than 30 years after the so-called Oslo Accords. This is just an attempt to revive that in the middle of a Holocaust.
And these are the very same countries that allowed the West Bank to be turned into a bunch of Bantustans that can never be a state because they're surrounded by a wall, because the settlement enterprise quadrupled under their Oslo fantasies, they're the ones who allowed this to happen, that didn't speak up when the West Bank was being turned into something that could not be a state. So I just find that part really rich. The elections part is really rich too, because the reason why there's not been elections is because of Mahmoud Abbas. And it's because of the international community that blocked elections because, wait for it, because they were going to lose. Every time they're going to lose. And the first time when Hamas won the election, all of these countries, they thought Abbas was going to win the elections. That's how little they understood about Palestine. And Condoleezza Rice fell off of her treadmill when she saw that Hamas won the elections, because they thought that Abbas was going to win. And since that election, they have not allowed elections to happen again, because every time it's been clear that Hamas will win those elections again.
Yeah.
So
And every single time in history that one of these genocidal colonial settler, these genocidal settler colonies were facing indigenous resistance, they defined it as terrorist. Every single time. The British in Ireland, the French in Algeria, the Americans in Vietnam. I mean, it's the same story everywhere. And then they end up handing over to the so-called terrorists. The same in Afghanistan. Now, Donald Trump is saying he wants Bagram Air Base built by the Soviet Union back.
And they built it.
So every single time, the ANC, the African National Congress, all these countries considered it a terrorist organization. Who do they think they're fooling here? And then, Tamara, can we show the tweet from Benjamin Netanyahu? His response, it's just part of it, but his response to this recognition, so-called recognition. That's the one where he says, let me just find it in my notes. Sorry, I'm a little discombobulated.
He's like being very paternalistic.
Yeah, here it is.
Like, just wait till your father gets home, sort of thing.
Yeah, so Netanyahu says, the response to the latest attempt to force upon us a terror state in the heart of our land will be given after my return from the United States. Stand by. What is that response going to be? That's a clear threat. We know what Israel does to Palestinians. It mass murders them. So it's going to include more land theft, more demolition of homes in the West Bank, more expulsions, more killings, more crimes, more vengeance, which will be meted out against the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
And I ask you this, will France, will Canada, will Australia, will Portugal, will Malta, will all the other countries joining this circus do anything to prevent that or to punish Israel for it?
No,
you bet they won't. And they will have brought more vengeance and disaster on the heads of the Palestinian people. And it's important to say this because there are people, we just heard Ahmed Abu Artema in that incredible interview earlier in the show, talking about how Palestinians tried everything, including the 2018 Great March of Return, a non-violent mass movement to assert their rights, not their aspirations, their rights. And Israel murdered hundreds of people, maimed thousands of people. And so are we going to say, oh, well, Palestinians brought it on themselves for going out and marching peacefully? That's why Palestinians did the October 7th resistance operation, because it was the only option to exercise their internationally recognized right to resist against a colonial occupation, a military occupation, which has last summer been declared by the International Court of Justice finally to be inherently illegal in itself. And so they had the right to do that. Nobody can ever say, as all of these do, all of these countries hint at, that Hamas brought disaster on the Palestinian people, or the resistance, because the resistance isn't, we mustn't equate it only with Hamas. The resistance is wider than that. So let me rephrase that the resistance brought disaster on the Palestinian people by the October 7th operation, and they're to blame for it. And Mahmoud Abbas, the quisling collaborator, traitor in the West Bank, says it too, that the resistance brought disaster on the Palestinian people. Well, I'm telling you now, their so-called peaceful, diplomatic, aspirational momentum, circling back to the whiteboarding and brainstorming idea of a two-state solution, or whatever other colonial corporate garbage speak they want to add to this, that will bring disaster to the Palestinian people. It will bring more Israeli vengeance, more Israeli destruction, and none of them will lift a finger to stop it.
No, they'll just, issue another condemnation or a statement, and with the other hand, they'll keep sending weapons and sign arms deals and.
Keir Starmer's spy planes are still flying over Gaza to help direct the genocide forces of Israel.
That's right.
We have the Mahmoud Abbas clip, I think, that we can show. I just want to make the quick point first that, at least, Mahmoud Abbas, as you mentioned, Mahmoud Abbas was actually elected the so-called president of the Palestinian Authority 20 years ago. 20 years ago. This is how long this guy has been in place. It's completely undemocratic. There was then legislative elections to the Palestinian Authority the following year, which Hamas won. And as John said, they haven't allowed elections to take place ever since. But at least, at very minimum, 81% of Palestinians want Mahmoud Abbas to step down. He's incredibly unpopular. And these are polls of the West Bank and Gaza Strip only, which, to be honest, I question the reliability of. But, even those polls show that of the vast majority of Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip want him to step down. So this is someone who is not, by any stretch of the imagination, popular amongst Palestinians. And yet, of course, these so-called world leaders like Albanese are just fawning over the guy as if he's got some sort of democratic legitimacy, when the complete opposite is true. And this is the guy who they're fawning over at the UN and just condemned everything, condemned resistance at the UN.
Can we show the pictures of what's happening at the so-called Palestinian embassy in? Oh yeah, you've got the Abbas clip. Let's do that first. You wanted to show that, Asa.
Despite all what our people have suffered, we reject what Hamas carried out on the 7th of October. These actions that targeted Israeli civilians and took them hostages, because these actions do not represent the Palestinian people, nor do they represent their just struggle for freedom and independence. We have affirmed, and we will continue to affirm, that the Gaza Strip is an integral part of the state of Palestine, and that we are ready to bear full responsibility for governance and security there. Hamas will not have a role to play in governance. Hamas and other factions will have to hand over their weapons to the Palestinian National Authority as part of a process to build the institutions of...
Yeah, amazing. This is what a Palestinian Zionist looks and sounds like.
Yeah, it was written. That speech was written by Huckabee, probably.
Well, this Palestinian Zionist Mahmoud Abbas wasn't even allowed to go to New York to deliver this prostration and this boot licking and foot kissing of Israel and the Zionists. He had to do it by Zoom. Because they wouldn't let him in. This is what collaboration and treachery gets you. Your masters spit on you and humiliate you, and the more you prostrate yourself before them, they spit on you and humiliate you even more. Let's go, if we can, unless someone else wants to say something about Mahmoud Abbas. But yeah, this is. So
this was the role of the Palestinian Authority in London. The Palestinian Authority representative in London for several years now has been Hussam Zumlot, and their office in London was, after Keir Starmer's announcement, was upgraded from what was called a mission to what's now called an embassy. And they held this sort of ceremony of replacing the sign outside the embassy, boasting that it's now the embassy of the state of Palestine.
Yeah,
and
I want to say something about that, Asa. They did change the sign from, mission of the Palestinian Authority or whatever to embassy of the state of Palestine. And someone on X, on Twitter, recalled a Palestinian saying, and I asked my dad about it too, and he confirmed it, that they say it in his village, and it goes like this: "بس ضايل ثلاث حدوات وفرس وبصير خيال." And let me translate that. It's a funny story or a saying about a man is going down the road and he finds a horseshoe, and he picks it up and he runs back to his village and he shows everyone, "Look what I found. I found a horseshoe. Now all I need is 3 more horseshoes and a horse, and I'll be a horseman." That's what this is.
Yeah, seems apt. Well, I mean, you could see British viewers, especially from this photo, will probably recognise that the ceremony was attended by a who's who of Labour government cronies, not even the top level cronies, it has to be said, but attendees included the Middle East Minister Hamish Falconer, and in this tweet, the Health Minister Wes Streeting, who posted this sort of selfie with Hussam Zumlot. Streeting is a hard right Blairite in the Labour Party, and he's often viewed as a likely successor to Starmer as Prime Minister, and he's been listed by Labour Friends of Israel as one of its supporters. And at the beginning of the genocide, all these people were lining up to say that they opposed a ceasefire, very early on, and all these kind of disgusting things.
Look
that
how
they were
happy
saying.
they are.
Yeah.
Well, all the most bitter enemies of the Palestinian people,
Labour enemies of
undying
Palestine,
supporters of this genocide, are supporting this and celebrating it.
Yeah, and they see it as a way to kind of. As we said, not everyone in this photo is
right.
Sorry,
it's to change the subject from something.
Yeah,
it's to change the subject, and they see it as a way to kind of cover up for their sins at the beginning of the genocide, where they was just openly supporting Israel, and the government is still openly supporting Israel, but now they're able to say to their constituent, well, we recognize the state of Palestine is something that they can say, and they can kind of fool people on to sort of just change the subject, as you said, which you've made the point, Ali, that what they really should have been talking about at the UN is this commission of inquiry.
Which I think we can show, just to remind people that I think less than 2 weeks ago, the independent UN Commission of Inquiry, this is an independent, these aren't people who aren't answerable to America's poodle and Israel's poodle, Antonio Guterres. These are independent international figures, and they concluded that Israel is in fact committing genocide in Gaza. And imagine if an independent commission had concluded that Russia is committing genocide in Ukraine, for example. What would Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, all those clowns, be talking about now? Nobody's mentioning this. And remember, as Craig Mochaiber reminded us just a couple of weeks ago when we had him on this live stream, that I think it's today, I have to check the date, but it was last September, I think 24th or 25th, that the UN General Assembly passed that resolution giving Israel a deadline of 12 months to stop, to end its occupation, to withdraw completely from occupied Palestinian territories. And nobody is talking about that. The only discussion at the UN should be, what sanctions are we going to impose? Not even Mahmoud Abbas talked about that, because he was told, you'll get your little fake recognition if you shut up about any accountability. Don't you dare bring up accountability, because that's not how the game is played. And let's look. You mark this for us, Asa. Antonio Guterres's tweet about this. This was just yesterday or 2 days ago, I think. He says, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is morally, legally, and politically intolerable. The nightmare must stop. Today, I called on world leaders to do all they can to ensure the two-state solution prevails for the people of Israel, Palestine, and all humanity. What is going on here?
I mean, it's as if someone had said during the end of the Second World War that the Nazi Jewish conflict was morally, legally, and politically intolerable.
Or the black-white conflict in South Africa during apartheid, which is in fact what the Western liberal press did do during apartheid. They did try to present that atrocious, racist, white supremacist regime that murdered and oppressed people in South Africa just for being indigenous black people in South Africa. They called it a conflict, and they called it complicated, and they called it nuanced, and they called it all the things they claim this genocide is. And it is absolutely outrageous. What Antonio Guterres had no excuse not to call this a genocide over the last 2 years, but not to use that word after the independent UN Commission of Inquiry concluded this genocide is absolutely outrageous. And he doesn't mention the genocide. He doesn't mention stopping the genocide. He doesn't mention accountability. He equates the victims of genocide with the perpetrators. This is Ahmed Abu Artema said it. Ahmed Abu Artema said that this international system has completely failed and has to be replaced by something else, and nobody should celebrate this. We should condemn it. We should condemn these fake recognitions. We should condemn the continued use of the two-state fantasy to distract from the genocide that all these countries are helping Israel to perpetrate. And the sole focus should be on accountability and pressure to stop this genocide and bring all those who are responsible for it to justice.
Including those states that have been enabling and cheerleading this genocide.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a bit passionate about this. But, just watching it over the last period, it's disgusting.
No, it makes you
It's
insane.
disgusting when you see what they're doing in Gaza. When you look at what Ahmed talked about and what Nora reported on at the beginning of this program, as she has every week over the last 720 days, and none of them are talking about it.
Yeah, and there's people of goodwill who don't really understand. I'm talking about in solidarity movements especially in the UK, who don't really understand the true role of the Palestinian Authority. Like Hossam Zomlot, for example, regularly leads Palestine solidarity demonstrations in London. Or at least turns up to them, and people don't really understand that.
Hossam Zomlot distributed sweets. We just heard Ahmed Abu Artema telling us that a cup of coffee was a dream in Gaza, that he couldn't go and get food because he didn't have energy to go and get food. And Hossam Zomlot and the so-called embassy of the so-called state of Palestine that exists only in their imagination was distributing sweets publicly.
Yeah, I mean, that really says it all. They are during the solidarity movement for South Africa, during the anti-apartheid movement, there was no part of the solidarity movement which supported the Bantustans, these fake states that the white supremacist regime set up as so-called homelands for what they called the Bantu people. Nobody recognized them, but unfortunately, people in solidarity movements in the West do recognize the Palestinian Authority, and I think that's a problem.
It is. There are just one or two things that we should also talk about as this farce, as this circus around so-called recognition of a so-called state carries on. Spain, meanwhile, announced that it was sending a naval ship to accompany or protect or something the flotilla, the Gaza Samud flotilla that I think there's about 50 boats that have been leaving kind of in successive waves from Southern Europe. The Spanish government said that they are sending a Navy boat. The Italian government is now sending 2 Navy boats. This is after the entire country was shut down by students and activists and union members and school teachers and municipal workers the other day. And then there was this fiery speech by Colombia's Gustavo Petro yesterday at the UN General Assembly. Ali, what can you say about these international developments?
Well, the flotilla is one of the things that gives us and gives people in Gaza a lot of hope. People in Gaza are saying, we're waiting for the flotilla. We want it to break the siege. And it's clearly a bit more of a challenge for Israel because of the sheer number of boats this time and the amount of global popular support that we're seeing for it, and the fact that many prominent international figures are on it. And Israel has been issuing direct threats to it. They've labeled it a Hamas flotilla, which is a very serious, that isn't just their usual cheap propaganda. No. That's laying a ground potentially to attack it, which is exactly what Israel did against the flotilla in 2010, which included several boats, the largest of which was the Mavi Marmara, which Israel attacked and murdered 10 people on that ship and kidnapped everyone on board, and they injured many other people. So it's clearly laying the ground for a potential military attack against this civilian humanitarian flotilla. And why wouldn't Israel do it? Because nobody's ever stopped them in the past and they've never faced consequences. But the announcement by Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, of sending a warship is, I think, a significant departure. Because remember, we've said before that all these EU countries, they sent boats to protect, they sent their navies to protect shipping to Israel in the Red Sea, so that, or through the Red Sea to break the Yemeni blockade, which is designed to stop the genocide, but they never sent a ship to protect a humanitarian flotilla to Gaza. So what Pedro Sanchez said in his statement is that the government of Spain demands that international law be complied with and that the right of its citizens to navigate the Mediterranean under safe conditions be respected. Tomorrow, a maritime action vessel, I think it's a naval vessel, equipped with all necessary means, will set sail from Cartagena in case it is necessary to assist the flotilla and carry out any rescue. Now, people have pointed out that that wording is somewhat loopholey.
Yeah.
Carry out a rescue, doesn't suggest that it suggests they're going to wait until Israel attacks it and see what they can do to help. But nonetheless, it does make it much harder for Israel to carry out a military attack if warships of allied countries are sailing along with it in order to protect at least their citizens who are on these boats, because there are citizens from all over Europe and the world. And indeed, it's been reported, although not announced quite so prominently, that Italy is sending a ship as well. I think that was confirmed by the defense minister in Italy, whereas this announcement was made by the Prime Minister of Spain himself, Pedro Sanchez, at a podium in New York at the United Nations. So this is quite a significant departure. And why not do it? I mean, why isn't Turkey, which has a very large navy, sending its navy and placing Israel before a choice? Either this flotilla goes through and it breaks the siege, or you attack the navies of Turkey, Spain, Italy, and whoever else, a coalition of the willing, let's call it. And that's the least that they should be doing. And again, reminding ourselves of what 𝐄𝐥𝐿 𝐄𝐿 tells us time and again, that the Genocide Convention, to which all these countries are signatories, gives them the legal authority, indeed the obligation to do this. Article 1 of the convention is that the signatories undertake to prevent and to punish the crime of genocide. So and it doesn't limit the action that they're allowed to take. So I hope that Spain, this is symbolic and it's important in that sense. Here's me supporting symbolism for once. People are always telling me, Ali, accept something. Okay, I'm accepting the symbolism of Spain finally breaking and Italy finally breaking with the, Israel can never be challenged consensus. But it has to be more than symbolism.
Yeah.
But this, I'll say this is a start. If other countries follow and Spain holds its ground, it's certainly unprecedented. We can say that.
Well, the ships are supposed to land in Gaza in the next few days, so we're going to be watching that very closely, of course. Let's look at the website. Oh boy, yeah. There's our colleague Michael Brown's fantastic report on John Fetterman, course, of Pennsylvania, denying the Gaza genocide, claiming it's a just war. Again, Michael does an extraordinary sacrifice for so many of us watching mainstream media and following these political monsters, holding them accountable. So go ahead and give his article a read. Of course, we have some extraordinary and heart-wrenching features by our writers in Gaza. That is a new one. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read the title.
Who profited
Thank
off
you.
7 October? It's about. It's a very interesting article by Jim DeBrose about the question of what extent did Israelis have prior knowledge of 7th of October. It's interesting.
Excellent. And of course, other features, and I know our colleague David Cronin has done some really, really great investigations around the EU lately. And Ali, you were you were not here last week, of course, and I did my best to thank our donors, but I know you probably have a little list that you want to get through, thanking people who are supporting the Electronic Intifada, and making sure that this live stream and our publication remains strong and vibrant. So,
yes,
yeah.
Thank you, Nora. And thank you, as always, to everyone who makes all our work possible. We can't do this without you. And I've got a slightly longer list because I was away last week. So I'm going to read a few names. Again, this is just to represent so many of you who make our work possible. And I wish I could thank each and every one. And so I'm going to thank Robert, Andrea, Dina, Sam, Morton, Yvette, Pam, Carlos, Skylar, Conrad, Fakhreddin, Bisan, Maureen, Maximilian, Wendy, Jung, Thomas, Andrew, Mark, Hassan, Rusiada, Steve, Abdu, Scott, and Heidi. Thank you to each and every one of you, and to all of you who are here with us week in, week out, who read all these articles, especially who read and share the work of our colleagues in Gaza. It's more important than ever to keep their voices loud, to make sure that people are reading them, read out their articles, read them out on street corners. You know, I mean, I'm serious. Get this stuff out there. People have to hear. Ahmed's story today was so, I mean, his account was so extraordinary. And he said that there aren't words, and I get what he means by that. But at the same time, our writers, our contributors are struggling to find those words and convey those realities. And I feel like we all have an obligation and responsibility to get them seen and heard by as many people as possible. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ali. As always, sign up for our email list at electronicintifada.net. You can hit the donate now link there or at the bottom of this video.
Yeah, and just Nora, people have to sign up for the email list. It's the get updates
That's right.
link at the top left, and then on the other side is the donation link. But the get updates is where you can sign up for the email list and stay up to date on everything we're doing.
Wonderful. Thank you. And as always, thank you to Tamara Nassar for directing and producing this live stream and everything that she does in preparation and post-production, everything. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you to Eli Gerzon for social media production. Thank you to Pierre Loisel for condensing this stream into a package for radio stations around the world. And thank you to our incredible staff, Maureen Claire Murphy, Michael F. Brown, David Cronin, Leah Caldwell, Omar Karmi, everyone at the Electronic Intifada. And on behalf of myself and John, Asa, Ali, and Tamara, thank you. And we will see you next week.